There is a particular kind of all-consuming dread that only tragedy can produce. Not the dread of what might happen, but of what must. You feel it in the way a story quietly seals its exits one by one, without announcement, like doors closing softly in a house you can no longer leave. Every decision that seems merciful in the moment is revealed in time to be another step along a path that was always going to end here. You recognize the shape of it long before the characters do, and the recognition does not save you. It does not grant you distance or superiority or peace. It traps you. Because you are no longer watching events unfold, you are watching a fate arrive on schedule. And there's nothing to do but witness it keep its appointment. The Last of Us is described often as a post-apocalyptic survival story. It has the trappings of one. Infected bodies and ruined cities, scavenged supplies and brutal economies where every bullet is a small act of faith. But survival was never the real problem. The characters are extraordinarily good at it, skilled and resourceful and capable of enduring things that would unravel most people entirely. They move through catastrophe the way water moves through stone, patient, relentless, finding whatever passage remains. What they cannot survive is what they feel. And so the series functions less like a survival narrative and more like a tragedy in the oldest sense. Not the modern shorthand for something merely sad, but the classical architecture of it. The structure in which love is not a shelter, but a mechanism in which the very qualities that make a person good, their loyalty, their grief, their ferocious need to protect the ones they have left, become the precise instruments of their undoing. The characters do not fall because they are weak. They fall because they care too much, and in a world this broken, caring too much is its own kind of doom. Classical tragedies are built on an implicit cruelty. The hero is not destroyed by a flaw they could remove. They're destroyed by something admirable that becomes destructive when taken too far. Ambition, love, curiosity. Their greatest strength is the very thing that makes catastrophe unavoidable. Joel's defining trait is not violence. It's devotion. Before the world ended, he loved his daughter in ordinary, unremarkable ways. He worked too much. He teased her about her taste in music. He promised to get her a new shirt later. The tragedy begins in those first 20 minutes of the game, when later never arrives. Watch his face in the opening sequence. It is not the face of a man who knows how to process catastrophic loss. It is the face of someone whose entire emotional architecture was built around protecting one person, and who has just had that purpose violently removed. That absence doesn't heal, it calcifies. It becomes something colder and more guarded, like scar tissue growing over a wound that never fully closed. When Joel meets Ellie, that scar throbs and recognizes its missing shape. Their bond forms reluctantly, unevenly, almost resentfully at times, and that is precisely what gives it tragic weight. Joel keeps Ellie at arm's length for the first half of the game. He passes her off to Tess. He frames their journey in purely transactional terms. He calls her cargo. This is not indifference. It's a man who understands on some level that allowing himself to care will expose him to the same kind of loss that broke him before. His resistance is not coldness. It's self-preservation. And in a tragedy, self-preservation is often the first step toward ruin. Because the moment he allows himself to love her, and you can track that moment, the slow accumulation of small gestures, the joke about his terrible music taste, the way he hesitates before leaving her alone in the university, the logic becomes irreversible. Every protective instinct he has, every promise he failed to keep for Sarah, every buried, torrid terror of helplessness converges on a single unspoken rule. This child will not be taken from me. From that moment, the ending is already written. We just don't know it yet. The hospital sequence is often discussed as a moral dilemma. Should Joel save Ellie at the cost of a potential cure? Was he right? Was he selfish? Was he justified? But framing the scene as a moral question obscures something more important. Joel does not experience it as a question at all. There is no moment of hesitation, no long pause in a corridor where he weighs outcomes or considers alternatives. He moves through the hospital with a particular kind of velocity, not the frantic urgency of panic, but the focused, almost mechanical momentum of someone whose decision was made long before the situation presented itself. The fireflies are not to be negotiated with. They are simply in the way. In tragedy, this is the moment when character becomes destiny. Joel's love does not lead him to a choice. It removes the possibility of any other choice existing. If Ellie dies on that table, Joel does not just lose her. He relives the exact moment that defined his entire life. The universe would repeat its cruelty, and he would once again be the man standing in a parking garage, holding someone he failed to protect. He simply cannot endure that twice. He knows intellectually that Ellie might want to make this sacrifice. Knowledge does not save him. It only makes the anti-decision more painful while changing nothing about its outcome. That's what separates tragedy from simple moral failure. Tragedy is not about ignorance. It's about clarity that arrives too late to alter behavior. After the hospital, Joel lies to Ellie. The lie is delivered quietly, in a car, with the careful cadence of someone constructing a reality that will cause the least immediate pain. There were many immune people. The fireflies had given up. Her life is no longer needed for that purpose. He looks ahead at the road when he says it. What makes the lie tragic is not that it's false. It's that it's genuinely loving. Joel isn't lying to control Ellie or preserve his own moral standing. He's lying because the truth would force her to confront the fact that her life could have meant something monumental, and that he took that possibility from her without asking. He wants to spare her the weight of that knowledge. He wants her to live without the burden of being the cure. In trying to protect her autonomy, he quietly removes it. The lie preserves their relationship in the short term. It allows them to build something in Jackson that resembles normalcy, guitar lessons, inside jokes, the comfortable rhythms of a shared life. But unresolved truths do not disappear. They sit in the quiet spaces between conversations. They shape the way two people look at each other without quite knowing why. There's warmth there, but there's also something slightly held back on Ellie's side. A faint undercurrent of a question she hasn't learned to ask. When she eventually learns the truth, the rupture is not explosive. It's hollow. She's not simply angry about what Joel did. She's grieving the years she spent living inside a reality constructed for her by someone she trusted completely. The life she built was real, but it was built on a foundation she never consented to. Joel saved her, and in doing so altered the meaning of her survival without her knowledge. It's not the act of a monster, it's the act of someone who loved too fiercely to tolerate uncertainty. The second game does not undo the first. It extends its tragic logic forward, showing how emotional decisions echo across the years, and across people who never even made them. Ellie's life in Jackson looks stable on the surface. Community, friendships, a relationship with Dina, moments of genuine joy. But something remains unresolved. The lie has created a subtle fracture in her sense of self, a nagging awareness that there's more to her story than she's been told. When the truth arrives, it doesn't empower her, it destabilizes her. Every memory of Joel acquires an additional tainted layer. This person who loved her beyond reason also decided the shape of her life without asking. She doesn't stop loving him, that would be too simple, and the game is too honest for that. Instead, she exists in the painful, unresolved space where love and resentment occupy the same ground. She tells herself she'll find a way through it, that there will be time to have that conversation, that things will settle. Then, Joel is killed, and all the time she was deferring runs out at once. Revenge in this context is not primarily about justice. It's about trying to reclaim a conversation that can no longer happen. The apology that might have been offered, the forgiveness that might have been extended, the complicated understanding that might have formed with enough distance from the hospital. If she can punish the person who took Joel away, perhaps she can avoid confronting the full, unresolvable complexity of what he was to her. Savior and liar, father and thief of possibility. The person she loved most and the person who deceived her most completely. And yet, she inherits Joel's emotional logic without ever intending to. Just as he could not allow her to die, she cannot allow his death to remain unanswered. The cycle is not thematic decoration, it is psychological continuity, passed down like a learned behavior neither of them chose. Abby's presence complicates the structure in ways that should feel more uncomfortable than they do on first encounter. Her father was the surgeon that Joel killed. Her life, like Ellie's, is defined entirely by an absence created by Joel's devotion to someone else. From her perspective, and the game insists that we occupy her perspective, Joel is not a protector. He's the man who erased her future in the name of his own grief. When Abby kills Joel, she's not enacting senseless cruelty. She's performing what she experiences as a necessary emotional correction. And here is what makes this genuinely unsettling rather than just structurally elegant. Her internal logic is identical to Joel's. Both acts arise from love narrowed into something absolute, something that cannot accommodate competing claims on the world. Joel killed to protect the person he loved. Abby killed in response to that same act of protection. The game doesn't present these motivations as morally equivalent. It presents them as tragically comprehensible, and then forces you to sit with the discomfort of that comprehensibility. Because if we understood Joel's violence as an expression of love, the architecture that makes Abby's violence make sense is the same architecture. We cannot selectively apply the logic. We either accept that love can produce this in people, or we condemn both of them for it. An eye for an eye leaves everyone blind. There's no external evil corrupting these characters. There is no real primary antagonist in The Last of Us. They are undone by the intensity of the very bonds that give their lives meaning. This is what removes the comfort of moral distance, and it's supposed to. Most revenge narratives offer a release, the final confrontation, the decisive blow, the restoration of balance. The Last of Us Part 2 does not, and it refuses in a way that is specifically designed to be experienced rather than observed. The game stretches the act of revenge across hours of play, forcing you to inhabit the violence long after any initial sense of purpose has evaporated. By the time you're moving through the bodies of people you have come to know, Mel, Owen, others whose lives you have lived inside, the acts no longer feel like justice. They feel like a cost being paid in a currency you did not know you were spending. By the time Ellie and Abby face each other in the water, there is nothing left to extract. No triumph, no relief, no sense that the ledger has been balanced. There is only depletion, physical, emotional, moral. Each has lost the people who anchored them to something healthier. Revenge has not healed their grief. It has spread it outward, ensured that more people now carry the same emptiness. When I played this scene for the first time on stream, I was audibly pleading with Ellie not to do this. It felt so utterly and supremely empty. Ellie's decision to let Abby go is sometimes framed as a moral awakening, a moment of grace that redeems the journey, but it's more ambiguous than that. It's less about forgiveness and more about recognition. She sees, perhaps for the first time with full clarity, that completing the cycle will not restore Joel, will not recover the conversation that was cut short, will not provide the resolution she's been pursuing with such single-minded intensity. She stops not because the mercy comes easily, but because she finally understands that continuing would cost her the last fragments of herself that still exist outside her grief. Ellie's victory is to stop. But in tragedy, insight arrives at the precise moment it can no longer prevent the damage already done. The final image of Ellie returning to the farmhouse is not one of peace. Dina is gone. The life that briefly resembled stability has dissolved. The guitar, Joel's guitar, the one he played for her, the symbol of everything their relationship grew to contain, sits in the corner of an empty room. She sits down. She tries to play. But of course she can't. The missing fingers make the familiar chords impossible to form. What she reaches for comes back incomplete. It's one of the most precise images in either game. This is what tragedy does to its characters. It leaves them capable of continuing but altered in ways that make their old forms of expression unreachable. The music is still inside her. The love that gave her the music is still inside her. But the path between feeling and expression has been severed. She doesn't collapse. She doesn't die. She walks away. And that is perhaps the most devastating outcome that tragedy can produce: survival without restoration. Life continues, but it continues in a landscape permanently reshaped by choices that were understandable and loving, and ultimately catastrophic. Because The Last of Us is not primarily concerned with whether humanity can survive an apocalypse. Clearly it can. Communities form, crops grow, children are born, systems re-emerge from the rubble. What the series examines instead is whether human beings can survive the consequences of loving each other in a world where loss is constant and protection feels like the only rational response to chaos. Every character acts from a desire to shield someone from harm. Every act of shielding creates new harm somewhere else. No one is purely heroic, and no one is purely monstrous. They are people whose most admirable qualities, loyalty, devotion, willingness to sacrifice everything, become destructive when the world offers them no safe outlet for those qualities. And that is the essence of tragedy, not the fall of the wicked, but the unraveling of the devoted. Not a lesson about avoiding evil, but a meditation on how even our best impulses can carry us somewhere we would never consciously choose to go. In the end, the infected are not what doom these characters, nor is scarcity, nor violence for its own sake. What dooms them is this simple, unbearable fact that loving someone in this world means accepting the risk that you will one day be asked to choose between their life and everything else. And when that day comes, they already know what they will do. They will choose love, and the tragedy will continue. Thank you for watching.